Hey guys, it's Kelsey and I'm back with another scrapbooking process video. So this is for Mercy Tiara's autumn challenge to do a monochromatic layout. So it was supposed to be a very craft brown, cream, gold monochromatic layout with one pop of a single color. So I pulled out all my browns, all my crafts, all that kind of brown colors that I had in my stash, and then I decided to go with blue. I have this precious photo of Bennett from when he turned 5 months old, and it's already very creamy and brown with pops of blue, so I figured that would be perfect. I haven't used craft in a minute, so I'm surprised I even had a piece in my stash, but I did have one as well as this chocolate brown. So I decided I was going to start out with a double matte with these two browns and then have that one colored cardstock pattern paper as the main background, just because I think that's the only paper I bring in that is a color, so I wanted it to be the main pattern paper, and then have everything else kind of be those browns and in that kind of color scheme. So really quick, I'm just getting the 12 by 12 piece together. I have the craft as the larger, biggest mat, and then I'm just gonna have a skinny strip of this chocolate brown, and then of course this main pattern here as the main background. So that's where I'm starting. I'm gonna piece that together really quick and then we'll get going. I don't have a whole lot of brownish things in my stash, so I ended up with a tiny little pile of whatever I thought could go. So I did pull in like a brown paper bag, a few craft tags I had, a few craft labels. I pulled in a cream frame. So you'll see as I get going, just try and build off of the stuff I have. I do have a really cool scrap of a brown paper that you'll see me pull in. That is a scrap from a later hop video, so you will see that later if you're wondering where that came from and why I have it. It's very unique in my opinion. So you'll see that used on this page, but that'll be introduced in a later hop video. I have this little scrap of this frame here, which is kind of a creamy frame. So I thought it might be cool to get that scrap used up and start it as a little embellishment cluster in the upper right. So it's kind of where I'm starting. I know I want my photo kind of in the bottom left area, and I'm going to start building my layers from there. I decided to start with matting the photo the same way I matted the background. So I'll have a skinny mat of this chocolate brown and then a larger mat of this craft. So I'm going to get that all glued together. I do cut the photo down a little bit just because there's this extra wall space in the photo I didn't really need. So I trimmed that up a tiny bit. So I'm going to get the mats for the photo down and then we'll start building from there. But I really liked this. I liked how the mats on the photo are the same as the mats on the background, and it brings that brown automatically into the page, so that all makes sense. I was really nervous to do this page because I wasn't quite sure how it would turn out doing all these brown tones together and then introducing just one pop of one color. So that was super interesting and super fun challenge. I am really happy with how it turned out, but when I was looking at all the supplies I pulled to begin with before I started, I was like, I don't know how any of this stuff is going to go together. But I really enjoyed it, and this is a really fun challenge because it forced me to look into my stash, into a lot of things I've overlooked and ignored and forgotten about for a long time. So that seems to be a theme this series with all these extra bonus challenges this autumn. A lot of them incorporate stash items. So that's really, really neat. And this isn't even a stash dive challenge. There is another challenge that's a stash dive challenge, so I haven't got to that one yet. You'll see that later on. But here's that scrap of a brown pattern paper I have. It's actually a fawn print, like a deer photorealistic fur print. I thought it was super, super cool. Not a picture, a paper I would have picked up for myself, but I picked it up for a specific challenge that you guys will see later on, and I ended up being really, really pleased with it. But I had a surprisingly biggish scrap left of it, and I didn't want it to go to waste. I knew it was a really unusual paper, and if I didn't use it soon, I probably would never use it. So since it is in that brown color scheme, I decided I would get a huge chunk of what was left of it up on this page. So I just kind of have it laid out as a large horizontal strip. I'm not quite sure what I'll do with it. I feel like I want to tear it. I want to cut it down a little bit, but I'm not sure where. So I'm just leaving it a whole piece for now until I decide where I want that layer to go. And then I had these really cute little burlap bows. So I pulled a few of those off to use in my embellishment clusters, as well as a few of those little craft labels. So I thought that was really cute to start a little embellishment cluster. I know I want stuff building off of this photo and then up in that upper corner with the frame. Because I have that frame there, I decided I would pull in a second frame just to kind of keep everything cohesive. So I did just tuck another one behind there to be the base for that cluster. So I'm really just mimicking whatever I'm doing in one area in the other like I like to do. I also pulled in some twine that I had, and I'm just going to loop them around my fingers a couple times, tie it together, and then staple it to those two areas as a little bit of a cluster. I think that's really cool, adds a lot of texture, adds another brown tone, and kind of beefs up those clusters a little bit. Those little bows are really cute, but they were looking really bare and naked up there without anything else, so I think having that little twine bundle behind it really helps. So I'm going to get that all tied together, and then I'm just taking my little tiny attacher and stapling it to that label. I did not want to have to mess with glue with this twine bundle, so that was a really quick and easy way to do it. And then I'm just making sure I staple it where the bow is going to be anyways, because that bow sits over the staple, so you can't end up seeing it anyways. So yeah, doing the same thing with the bottom cluster. I think I used the twine a little bit later on, actually. I was about to say I think I'm done with the twine, but I'm not. So there's that. And then I kind of get stuck here for a little bit. I'm trying to think of what other layers I can pull in. I just want a little bit more. I think about maybe a doily, but then it was kind of looking awkward the way it was laying behind the frame. So instead I decided to go through my vellum scraps that I had left, and I had a few strips of vellum scraps left over. So I am going to cut a banner out of that, and I'll have a fishtail banner in each area as well. So this larger one's going to run all the way underneath the photo out past the embellishment cluster. You guys know I like doing these kind of shelf elements where there's a one skinny long element that the rest of the page kind of sits on. I think that's a really good anchoring piece. And vellum always makes it super interesting because it's not heavy, you can see through it, but it adds that extra layery detail. I used to use vellum all the time, like almost on every page. Which is why I only have scraps left, because I've used so much of it. I'm out, but I haven't bought any more because I have so many scraps. So using scraps is helping. So I'll have that one going across there. And then I have a skinny, tiny scrap of a strip that I'm going to do another double fishtail banner and have up in the upper right-hand corner as well. So that kind of is reflected. But I'm finally going to attach everything down, so I go with my tiny attacher, just doing one little staple and then sticking that bow down over top of it. And then that's just going to lay up there by the frame. And then I can't remember what I do next. I know I get the cluster on the bottom kind of glued together too, but then I forget what step I do after that. Everything's just loose and floating around though, and it was driving me a little crazy that everything was mobile, so I'm always happy when I get to the point where I can start gluing things down. I still haven't trimmed down that fawn print. I know I kind of want the edges of this side to kind of be even around that photo. I end up deciding I'm just going to keep that torn edge, but I'm just going to tear it down a little bit so it's within that blue pattern paper. I just kind of want the same amount of distance on the right as there already is on the left, so you'll see that in a minute. But I keep that as a larger piece. I didn't think I would, but I think it's a pretty subtle print, even though it is an animal print. It's still like there's not a whole lot going on this page, so I feel like you can get away with a pattern like that, because even though there is kind of a lot going on the paper, it's still subtle enough, and I don't feel like it's too busy to where you can have a larger piece and it's okay. I kind of want people to be able to see that paper because I think it's really cool, so I didn't want to cover all of it up. But there you go with the small vellum banner. I did just cut it a little bit so it could slide up on either side of that staple because I wanted it tucked up under where that bow was going to be. So I had to jimmy rig that a little bit, but I think that adds a nice little soft detail up there as well. And then what do I do next? Here I go. I tear the paper. And I like that distance. And I'm pretty much going to leave it there too. I kind of like how there's a little bit of a larger gap underneath the those layers than on the sides. And then I realized now, I was like, oh crap, I was supposed to do a lot of journaling on this page because I wanted to write what my sister wrote about Bennett's benchmarks for this age. And I didn't really leave myself a journaling spot, and I didn't really want to write anywhere in the current open space. I wanted that to remain blank. So I did something I don't think I've ever done before, maybe once before, ever. And that's make a interactive piece of a page. So I did just tuck a glassine bag and glue it behind those layers. And I have this crafts tag I'm journaling on now. So I'm going to end up doing all my journaling on that tag, tucking it in the glassine bag so that whenever we do want to read about this page, we can just pull that tag out a little bit. I usually really don't like that. I really like people to be able to flip through and read everything without having to pull out the page or anything. But I did just make sure I pulled that twine out again and use that to loop through this tag. And I made the string long enough to where you can just you can pull it out easily from the top of the page. And this card is so long, you don't even have to pull it all the way out of the envelope. You can just pull it up a little bit to read it and push it back down to tuck it back in. So I think that was a good compromise. I usually don't like to do that, but I didn't want to really have to change the design of the page. And I just thought it was kind of something different and fun. Maybe when Bennett's older, he'll like being able to take that tag out and read it. So I'm just getting everything down. I wonder if I could read. Did I even have, let me get that page so I can read that journaling. I should know by now just to have this layout in front of me. So it just says, our little chunky monkey is 5 months old. Bennett is the happiest, giggliest, smartest little man. He loves rolling around, laughing at mommy and daddy, babbling, and Mr. Sloth, which is his little blankie he has in his lap there. Bennett is currently getting his first tooth, so we are saying goodbye to Gummy Bear Smile, such a treasure. And then the date. So this was in February this year. So I can't believe he's over 1 year old. That's just crazy to me. I'll put that back. There we go. So that just tucks in like that. And then I did go back and just add a little arrow so that while it's tucked in, you see that arrow so you know you can pull up on it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, something different for me. And now I'm just trying to figure out the rest of the page, honestly, because I'm looking at it and like it's still too bare. It still needs something more, but I don't know what else to do. I'm kind of down on my cream and brown layers, but I didn't want to really introduce another blue. So I decided just to glue all of this down because I know I like where that's going to go. And then I do a few other little embellishments. But this one is definitely tricky for me because I usually like doing a lot more layers than this. But with trying to do this kind of brown monochromatic thing with one pop of color, it would have probably been easier if I picked a pop of color I had a lot of, but this was a very particular type of blue, so I didn't really have a whole lot of that specific blue to pull in, and I didn't want to introduce a different tone of blue, if that makes sense. But I do have these blue enamel dots. Marcus actually picked these out for me at Hobby Lobby. He was very proud of himself, but this blue does go really, really well, so I am just going to do a cluster of 3 blue enamel dots in each of those twine clusters, and then I think I'm almost done after that. I know there's one more thing I have to do, but I can't remember if there was anything else I added until then. I have to do the title still, duh. Okay, so I pulled out these white foam root beer float. I just titled it 5 months. I thought it was simple and sweet and wouldn't change the design at all. I did have to use a W as an M, but I feel like you can get away with that super easily with most sticker sheets. So I just decided to spell it out like that. That's my title, simple and sweet. And then I do go in with some Heidi Swap Color Shine in the teal. I thought about doing gold. I kind of wanted to do gold, but I don't use the colored mist near as often. So I decided while we're doing this monochromatic thing, blue is my pop of color. Might as well use the blue Color Shine. So I did just do a little sprinkle along the diagonal and then a tiny bit up by that cluster with the frame. But that's the layout. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are having fun with these challenges. I will link the Facebook group below if you guys are wanting to play along. There are always prizes and a lot of supporting fun people. So thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.